I have any more fun, I don't know how I'm gonna do.
Night of the Horrified.
You're all invited.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
So how much exactly is a chainsaw?
Like, to buy it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably as much as a lawnmower.
Oh, man. That's pretty expensive.
You don't need a chainsaw.
Well, maybe I do.
For what?
My chili recipe?
Mm.
Welcome to Night of the Horrified. It is October. That's right.
Finally.
It is finally October. Even though it's like October year-round around here. And we are starting out Slash-a-rama month on the right foot with 1974's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Vroom.
And did you ever know the actual title, like because it's registered that way, is 2 words. It's Texas, and chainsaw is 2 words on the actual register and stuff. So you'll see it spelled that way, but not on the posters and stuff like that. I don't know. It's just a weird little fact nobody cares about. But
Oh, I thought it was 2 words no matter what. I wrote chain space saw.
really? I don't know. Maybe I've always just wrote it weird. Anywho, that's right. 1974 is The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Tobe Hooper's seminal masterpiece of a horror film. It kind of, oh man, I keep saying this about a lot of movies, but this really, I'd say this one really kicked off like the modern slashers, you know? Because, and Leatherface, whew, he's wonderful. I think out of all the slasher villains, he's up there with my favorites. I can't pick a favorite. What am I talking about? But in my opinion, this movie is probably one of the best movies ever made. And we'll get into it later of why I think that. But are you ready for a history lesson?
If we have to.
Well, sort of a history lesson. I'm going to keep this one brief because there's so much I could say about this movie. Yeah, God, it could fill a book. But anyway, so imagine you're in the middle of a crowded department store.
Oh, my worst nightmare.
Right. Okay. Now you're really crowded. You're getting a little claustrophobic. And you're looking around and you're thinking, how am I going to get out of here? Well, then you spot the chainsaws.
Okay.
This same exact situation happened to Tobe Hooper. And it was just him being claustrophobic in a department store, and that's how he came up with the chainsaw being the main weapon of destruction in this film. And honestly, okay, so people like to say, you know, this movie is based on Ed Gein, and this movie is based on this. It's a lot of different things. Ed Gein definitely influences it a lot. Even Tobe Hooper has said, you know, the stories he heard of Ed Gein growing up is what really influenced, like, the bones and, like, the furniture made out of human parts and stuff like that, and cannibalism. That really did influence it a little bit. But in my opinion, I think it's an amalgamation of a lot of things. I mean, you got to take in account like what the times were. You had the Watergate scandal happen, the 1973 oil crisis, the violence and the atrocities of the Vietnam War. I mean, that all came together in Hooper's mind and probably influenced this movie because you can see it in the way it's made. Now, there's a lot of satire in this movie too. Hooper put a lot of humor into it. And I think he was a little upset that nobody saw it when it first came out because honestly, if you first see this movie, there's no humor. It's scary as shit. But yeah, he was a little upset about that, and that's why we got Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and the way it is. But we'll cover that another time. But in 1973, with a budget of less than $140,000 and a cast of unknown hippies from a local theater and friends of Hooper, the man crafted one of the most seminal horror movies ever made. It raked in about $30 million at the domestic box office, which is an equivalent of $150.8 million in 2018 money.
Oh, wow.
So, and I could keep going, but this is going to be a beefy episode as is. So, let's cut right to it. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Vroom, vroom.
Is that our chainsaw noise?
That would suck. Can you imagine the weak-ass chainsaw noise? Vroom, vroom. Vroom, vroom.
I said
chainsaw.
I said vroom vroom.
I'm a sneaky chainsaw. All right, anyway.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, this starts off by telling us a little story, and I just kind of summarized it because I'm not here for a story. I'm here for murder.
So yeah, and what you're talking about is the opening little credit scroll, or the narrator at the very beginning. And he's the one that introduces it off, kind of like the Blair Witch movie we covered, where it starts out telling you this was a real story.
Right.
But this one actually does this right. And it could be. And we'll talk about that. But this narrator is John Larroquette. And most of our listeners will know him from Night Court, other works he's done. And I believe you might know him. Do you remember that movie Richie Rich?
Oh.
Macaulay Culkin.
I remember the name.
Oh, damn. Well, never mind. Well, anyway, I think he's like the bad guy in that one. But John Larroquette, and his payment for doing the opening narration was a joint.
Sounds good to me.
That's right. Tobe Hooper paid him in weed. And, this, man, and this is like a true Texan movie because everybody was from Texas, I think, except John Larroquette. But anyway, Hooper kind of wanted him to sound like Orson Welles a little bit, but he kind of just came off sounding like John Larroquette, and this is where we get the famous narration of the movie, and it starts you off with a bang. I mean,
does it though?
I think so. I mean, I remember when I first saw this, my parents they would show me movies and not tell me, hey, this is fake, so they would scare the shit out of me.
Oh.
And even my parents thought this was real. Like at the time, like my mom swore, because she's from Texas, she swore she knew the people that this happened to and stuff like that. And one of her cousins knew the person and all sorts of shit. But
your mother,
I
love
know,
her.
she's great.
So anyway, it talks about 5 youths, those damn youths, along for a ride, a day trip. And tragedy happens, and there is Sally and Franklin is an invalid, and that's what they use in the scroll.
And I think the proper term is paraplegic now, or is that's right? Wheelchair bound.
Yeah, it depends on what's wrong with him.
Right. But
I mean, they never just.
I don't think you're allowed to call people invalids.
No. No, you're not. But they said was a mad and macabre nightmare.
So yeah, this is supposed to be a true story, which I think honestly that's like subconsciously like you can tie it into how the government was lying to everybody at the time. If you think about it, kind of works parallel with that. How like selling this movie as truth was kind of like what was happening with the government selling us lies and stuff and going to Vietnam and all sorts of shit that led to everything. And speaking about terrible, like this opening scroll does, the shooting and the making of this movie was probably the most grueling experience anyone has ever had. Because like I said, they were under budget. They weren't being able to pay all the actors very well. I think they had to take half pay, and they were promised to get paid the rest later, but that didn't barely happen and stuff like that. And, I mean, they worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week in the summer heat of Texas, which was going through a brutal fucking heat wave, where I think the daytime temperature was like way over 100 degrees, and like later in the night, it was around 80. So... The heat did not let up. So most of the shots you see in this movie where people are looking fucking annoyed and like sweltered by the heat, it's probably real.
That's terrible.
Yeah. So like the miserableness that they show in this movie and stuff like that and how they're acting is probably genuine.
So it starts us off on August 18th, 1973. And it starts off and you hear this like chopping of wood or something like that. And these lights are flashing and you see parts of hands.
Yeah,
and
it's like pieces of gore and stuff like that. And to me, like, it's kind of, because these are like, kind of like camera flashes, especially with that noise.
Yeah.
Which is like in the opening of our show. I recreated that with a tuning fork. But, yeah, this noise, and it kind of sucks you in and kind of gives you bits and pieces about what's probably going to come at you later. Like, it's kind of like a puzzle.
Right.
Where it's like, and you see like a hint of gore and like these, it looks like a corpse.
Right. And the news on the radio starts playing like in the background as it's showing us this. And then we see a faceless person on a tombstone.
Yeah, it's like somebody has dug up this corpse and put it in like a really macabre fashion, like a strap to this tombstone. And what is that? Like another skull between his legs?
I guess.
God, that's delightfully gory.
And it's got no skin.
God, I don't know why that shot sticks with me. It was I think it was a pickup shot that they added later on, but oh man, that's the shot I always remember from this movie. This, and there's a shot later when Franklin gets it, but those two shots always stick with me whenever I think about this movie. Because like I said, as far back as I can remember, well, not like I said, I didn't say this. I'm getting ahead of myself. As far back as I can remember, this is the first horror movie I watched. As far as I can remember, I'm not sure. You know, I probably watched something before this, but this is the one I remember the most. And Jesus, was I fucking frightened, because like the roads and the woods and the grass and stuff like this. I know it's in Texas, but it looks like what you would see around where I lived and stuff. You know.
Well, Texas isn't that much different than Oklahoma.
True, we're just kind of Texas's top hat, but but like, yeah, like, and the people in this movie are people you would see. It's just, so there was like added realism to this for me.
Oh, definitely. I wrote moon, but that wasn't the moon. It was the sun.
You saw a moon, apparently. I did.
I don't know.
Were you high?
No. But when you look at the sun like that.
Oh, true. And it's beaten down, man. So
yeah. Anyway, it was the sun. And then we get an awesome shot of a dead armadillo.
Yummy.
And you know what? A fun fact. My niece lives in Indiana.
Uh-huh.
She didn't know what an armadillo was.
She didn't know what I mean, Indiana has armadillos, right?
She said she's never seen one. She had to Google it.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fucking weird.
It was very strange. Anyway.
And you gotta, oh man, like this shot, oh, Jesus. Like I said, it's gonna be a beefy one. But you gotta really fucking love these shots, the camera shots and stuff like that. I just fucking eat it up. Sorry.
It's hot. And you could tell it's hot because you can see the steam coming off of the ground.
Oh, yeah. And that shit's real. I think that's what helps this movie, because honestly, the way it's shot, and it was shot on 16 millimeter and blown up to 35. And it kind of, it required a lot of light, like these cameras they used, because they used a certain camera that required a certain fine grade film that when it was shooting and stuff like that, it required like twice as much light as a normal film.
Oh, wow.
And so that's why you get this kind of washed out, kind of grainy look to this movie, to where it looks almost like a documentary film.
It kind of does, yeah.
Like, and so the way it's shot, in accordance to the actual fucking heat and people are actually sweating, it gives it I don't know. This movie feels so raw and real. It's more than most of any of the other movies that were coming around at the time. And I think that's what sets it apart.
So, in the blistering heat, there's a van, and a guy gets out and puts these planks down, and another guy, which is Franklin, wheels out of the van because he has to pee.
Oh, Franklin. What'd you think about Franklin?
We'll talk about what I think about Franklin later.
Oh, it's okay, because a lot of people do not like Franklin. He's meant to be this way. In fact, Paul Partain, Paul A. Partain, sorry, he actually played him that way, and he was so into his character that he was kind of a fucking pain in the ass to everybody around him during the shoots and stuff. So much so that even Gunnar Hansen, who plays Leatherface, like hated him. Pretty much hated him until they met later on, and then they became friends. And so, like, this guy was so fucking committed to his character that he was pissing people off. So most of the reactions, I gotta question if those are fucking real. Like, of the people towards him.
That they might be. So, Franklin's going out to pee, and then this truck comes by because they're on the side of the road and honks at him. And it scares the crap out of him. He goes rolling down this hill out of his wheelchair, and everybody comes running towards him. I guess they pick him back up because the next shot, they're back in the van.
Yeah.
And he's in there. And he's bitching about how there's no air.
This heat, it's getting to me.
It's really hot.
It's so hot. Isn't it hot, Sally? It's so hot in here.
He's complaining. Pam, one of our women, is reading horoscopes. Jerry's driving the van. Kurt's just sitting there, kind of annoyed that Pam is reading the horoscopes. Not Kurt. Kirk.
Yeah.
Kirk.
You kept calling him Kurt.
Because that's what I thought you said.
So Kirk is played by William Vail, and Jerry's Alan Danziger, who I think Alan Danziger, he owns a entertainment company now in Hollywood. I think they have like stripograms and all sorts of stuff. Pam here is Teri McMinn, and I think retired after this. I don't think she did much other movies. I think she did a few things, maybe. I know she's in something here lately called Butcher Boys. I don't know what that's about. But, sometimes she'll make an appearance every now and then. She's not too excited. A lot of these people did not leave with a good time, like, after this movie.
Oh, right.
So, there's only like one person that comes back for the sequel. So that kind of tells you. But, yeah, she's Teri McMinn, and she's our hook girl later on. And we also have Sally, who is played by the amazing Marilyn Burns, who, Pam or Sally, if you had to choose.
Well, Sally's butt was better.
Right?
I'd have to say Sally all around because Pam's laugh was annoying.
Plus, she likes horoscopes, so, that's already. But Sally is, I think she's honestly, Marilyn Burns is honestly probably one of the first final girls. I say one of the first because I don't know if anything came out before that, but I'm going to say she's probably the best.
I would say so.
Because she's got that scream, man. That scream later on. And it's not annoying.
Right.
Like, it's just the right amount of terror. I don't know. And most of the time, like I said, the screams were probably kind of genuine. Yeah, Marilyn Burns.
Anyway.
Sorry, I had to.
That's okay.
I had to talk about Marilyn Burns for a minute.
So they are all driving to a cemetery where Sally and Franklin's grandfather was buried. Because they wanted to see if the man from the beginning with no skin that was on top of the tombstone was their grandpa.
Yeah,
or
because
if something had happened to their grandpa's grave.
right, because they're also listening on the radio, and that's during the scene with the corpse. You know, you hear the radio, and it's talking about like somebody's been desecrating graves and stuff. And I believe they even kind of mix in like some sound effects there at the beginning with you hear somebody digging and stuff like that. So it's kind of hitting, you know, it's kind of telling you someone's fucking around with graves and
right. So they're
corpses.
going to check it out to see if the grandfather's grave has been messed
Right.
up, if he's been buried or unburied. And then they pull up and get out, and there's a weird guy in a truck. What does he say to her?
Oh, he's telling her because she's asking him, you know, my grandfather or grandpa is buried here, and we were wanting to check on him and you know, something like that. And he tells her, the guy in the back of the truck points her in the right direction, tells her, you know, go talk to the sheriff, and he'll let you in to see about your grandpa. And so this guy in the back of the truck is actually kind of an important person in Hollywood. This is John Henry Falk, who was a storyteller and radio show host. He's mostly known for his successful lawsuit against the entertainment industry, which helped in the blacklist, the Hollywood blacklist, which was, oh man, it was terrible because it put a lot of actors and working people out of work because they would be labeled as a communist at the time.
Oh, wow.
Because this was during the 50s and the Cold War and stuff like that. And so he ended up suing because he became blacklisted. Well, his lawsuit was successful and it ended it. So, I mean, this is it's kind of an important American person here. And he's making a little cameo as an old man in the back of the truck.
That's funny.
I know.
There's also some guy on the ground with a beer, and he's like super drunk.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And he says that he sees things.
I've seen things. They laugh at an old man. It's like, oh, okay, creepy man. Creepy.
And put down the beer.
Oh, right.
So back in the van, Sally's telling Franklin that Grandpa's grave is fine.
Mm-hmm.
He isn't dug up. And she's like, I saw it with my own eyes. And they all start to smell something bad.
Oh, yeah.
And they drive a little further and they realize that they're driving by a slaughterhouse.
Yeah, and Franklin's kind of excited.
Yeah. Because he's like, my uncle worked there.
That's the old slaughterhouse.
And he's telling them about how they used to kill the cows with the
Right.
sledgehammer. And you had to hit them 2 or 3 times to kill them.
Then they got, what do you call it? A big bar or something?
A big air gun?
A big air gun. And it kills a bunch of them. And when you know,
And
he
it just
keeps
keeps
doing
going on
that.
and on.
And the whole time you're like, oh my God. Oh my God. Franklin dies, right? Franklin's
Right.
going to die, right? Even when I was a kid, I hated this character.
He just keeps describing this slaughtering, and it's like, whoa, bro.
And he's wheelchair bound. So you're like, why are you making me hate the wheelchair bound? The guy who's the most helpless of all this people.
Oh my gosh.
And oh my God, yeah. So Paul Partain does a damn good job.
So at this point, they see a hitchhiker,
Woo.
and they're back and forth on if they should pick him up or not.
He'll asphyxiate out there, man.
It's so hot.
I'm glad we don't do that nowadays. I never see a person on the side of the road. I'm like, oh, it's so hot outside. And you know what I blame is this movie. I've never picked up a hitchhiker because of this movie. Because look what fucking happens.
Now people get paid to pick up hitchhikers.
Exactly. And when they pick up the hitchhiker, because they do decide to pick him up because, you know, dumb mistake number 1. And so they pull over and they're again with the camera shots. Tobe Hooper. you have this wide shot of the van, which is, I believe, a 1972 Ford Club wagon.
Wagon?
E100? I can't remember.
Sure.
Oh, man. Why do I know that? Anyway, so the wide shot of them picking up the hitchhiker is beautiful, man.
Okay.
Sorry.
I believe you. I didn't pay that much attention, but I believe you.
Well, you got to watch this movie again then.
Okay.
I really think you got to watch it and soak it in as art the next time because, that's what I do. And, man.
So like you said, they picked him up. And Franklin's convinced that he is Dracula, that he is a vampire.
Yeah, because obviously the hitchhiker, which is played by Edwin Neal, Texas native. And it's weird because, like, you would think, like, watching this movie, there's something off. Because,
definitely.
Again, the way it's shot and everything, the way everybody's acting, because they're pretty good actors for just out of, like, acting school and stuff like that. And some of them weren't even going to acting school. So it's kind of convincing the way he's doing it. And he kind of modeled it after an eccentric relative of his. So, and that's how he got the part, he read the part and then he just acted like that. And Hooper hired him. But, yeah, Edwin Neal he's worked with Oliver Stone on JFK. Another movie, My Boyfriend's Back. I think he said his favorite projects are playing Bassanio. I think that's how you say that. To Sandy Duncan's Portia in Merchant of Venice, which is a stage production. So a lot of these guys went off to do stage work. Including Edwin Neal, who honestly doesn't really like to talk about this movie very much. Because we'll get into why. But, yeah, the hitchhiker. And, man, this is the creepiest fucking dude ever.
So, they're talking back and forth and asking him, like, where he came from, why he's outside, whatever. And he says he was coming from the slaughterhouse. Him and Franklin start talking about which way of killing the cows was better.
Oh.
And
Oh,
then,
no, that's not good because we put people out of a job. You got to use the hammer. That way was much better. They died better that way. This is like, oh.
What's even worse is he has pictures.
Oh, yeah, he shows him pictures. And I think, like, God, Tobe Hooper created, like, a bit of social satire, and I don't think he meant to. This is also kind of talking about how displacing people from jobs and like where they live and stuff is kind of fucks them up. Because maybe if these guys hadn't have been put out of a job at the slaughterhouse, maybe they wouldn't be killing people.
Maybe.
Because you can look at it as, just a bunch of crazy dudes killing people and eating them. Or you could also look at it as a bunch of crazy dudes who were cool until you took away their jobs and their way to get their homicidal tendencies out. And you put them loose in our world with nothing else to do and they got to eat. They have no other form of work to do. So look what happens. It's kind of like that. And I don't think it was on purpose, but turned out that way.
Or they would have just killed people in their free time, too, so...
Well, that's a good point. They could have been doing that. I mean, that
Anyway.
people barbecue later does look pretty good.
Anyway. Franklin pulls out his knife, because for some reason he just has a knife and he feels like he needs to pull it out. I don't know.
He like pulls it out and starts picking at something with it.
Yeah.
His fingernails or something. I don't know.
Well, this prompts the hitchhiker to grab the knife from him and slice his palm open.
Oh, my sweet Jesus.
And he's just laughing. And he thinks it's the best thing ever. And everybody is freaking the fuck out. I mean, they're not saying anything because, he's got a knife in his hand.
Yeah.
But they're like, okay.
And then he just like hands it back.
He just gives it back like it's nothing.
It's a nice knife.
Then he's like, I have a knife too. And he pulls out this straight razor from his boot.
Jesus Christ.
Everybody's like, Okay.
Man. And this scene's honestly like one of the most tense, like, interesting scenes in probably the whole, well, not the whole movie. And, later on we get a lot of, whew. But, I love this scene. I don't know. It's something about it that you just like stop and start watching. Like, I remember even a DVD commentary I watched a long time ago. Even I think it had Tobe Hooper and Gunnar Hansen, and they both just stopped talking. We're watching the movie.
That's because when a guy's just cutting his hand open, that's a little crazy.
And again, like, you got to question, was the reactions kind of real? Like, it's just, man.
Probably. So he puts his straight razor away and he pulls out a camera. And he takes a picture of Franklin, and then he invites everybody to dinner. They're going to have head cheese.
You like head cheese? My brother, he makes it real good.
And they're all like, no, we're good. And they're starting to talk about dropping him off or whatever.
Right.
At this point, his picture comes out and he develops it or whatever it is, where he just rips the thing off.
Yeah. It's an early, like, Polaroid type of thing.
Yeah. And he wants Franklin to pay $2 for the picture.
It's a good picture.
It's a good picture.
It's a good picture.
And Frank's like, I don't think so. And Franklin like tells him like, I'm not gonna pay for that or whatever. And the hitchhiker pulls out this piece of foil, puts the picture down, pulls out another piece of foil, and pours this like powder on it, and then lights it on fire.
So okay. What was your take on the scene?
This guy's a little cuckoo.
I mean, with the picture thing, like, what the hell's that about? To me, like, it may be just me reading too into this movie after I've seen it a bazillion times. I always felt like maybe it's like some kind of like, like the picture is somebody's soul.
Oh my god, you're reading into it way too much.
So he sets his fucking... I don't know. Maybe I was super high. But...
No.
I don't know. It's a weird little thing he does. And it may just... like you said, he's just cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
So, anyway, he lights the picture on fire. They start to pull the van over. He grabs Frank's arm, and I guess grabs the knife, and slices Frank's arm. And everybody's had enough, so they kick him out.
Right.
And as he's getting out of the van and shutting the door, he like rubs the blood on the van from his hand. And they just drive off like nothing happened, and Pam starts reading the horoscopes again.
Fuck, we picked up one of them crazy hitchhikers. Seventh time this week.
It was kind of like that.
Well, it makes you wonder, because people used to pick up hitchhikers all the time back then. You always wonder, like, I wonder how many crazy people would go through, like, picking up crazy folks.
Right. It was weird. So they go to a gas station because they need some gas. And the girls get out and they walk off. The attendant comes out and he says, there's no gas. And there's another attendant and he's just washing the windows. No questions asked, just washing windows.
Yeah.
And the attendant's like, I don't have any gas. They're going to come this afternoon to refill it.
Right. And I believe the window washer in this his name's Robert Curtin. And Robert Curtin, I believe he was a friend to Marilyn Burns at the time. And I don't know why I know this. I believe he worked at a camera rental firm from like 75 until he died in like 89. But that's just random knowledge Random knowledge. Whew.
So Franklin's asking the attendant about a house a little further away. The guy's like, yeah, I know that place, but you shouldn't go messing around.
Yeah, people liable to shoot you.
And Franklin's like, it's okay, it's my dad's place.
Ah, sure. Did you pause play?
He says, you guys can stay here and eat some barbecue, though.
Yeah, I got some good barbecue in here. Why don't you just stay?
So the girls are over and they are getting Cokes out of the Coke machine. And the attendant goes back inside and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. And it was Jerry that went in, right?
I believe so. And
yeah.
So right here, we get introduced to Jim Siedow, who I believe in this movie, you don't actually get a name. He's just the old man. And I think that's even what's in the script. In the second movie, you find out his name's Drayton Sawyer. So he's kind of like, I mean, everybody, if I'm spoiling this movie for you, you need to see more movies before you listen to our show. But, so he's kind of the head of this whole clan. And, I felt like during this scene, he's kind of like pointing them, like trying to get them from going that way.
Yeah.
You know, because it does kind of seem like, yeah, they're killing and eating people. We find out later on. But does it not seem like they kind of just want to be left alone?
Yes.
I don't know. I just got that feeling.
Yeah, I think so.
But Jim Siedow, he's probably one of the biggest actors in this movie at the time. Not like super well known, believe me. But he moved from, I believe, Chicago to Houston. And he was in the first, Houston's first production of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. He did other plays. He directed, Visit to Small Planet, Critics' Choice, Murder Among Friends. Oh, man. He acted in a lot of stage productions, like plays like Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and Lion in Winter. And I know you don't know any of these, but I was a theater for a little bit in high school, so we learned all these. But he made his film debut in he was, I believe, a rock star's like estranged father in this weird indie drama, The Wind Splitter. But this movie really took him off because of his like portrayal of Drayton, or old man, whatever you want to call him in this movie. But or the attendant, a lot of people call him that, like what you did. But man, his character in this movie goes through so many little flippy floppy changes. Like here, he's kind of nice, a little ominous, but kind of nice. So he seems super non-threatening. Right,
he did, and he's kind of trying to warn them, tell them not to go.
Yeah.
So Jerry goes in because they were like, "Oh, we should ask if there was another gas station." They go in or Jerry goes in and he comes out with some barbecue and he's like, "There's not another gas station, but I got some barbecue."
Yummy. Which, by the way, yes, I've seen this movie a lot. And yes, I still buy roadside barbecue. You know, if it's people, it's delicious, is all I'm saying.
Do you have the craving?
Well, I got the craving. The Saul, his family.
So they decide to go to the abandoned house and they pull up there and they go inside and they're looking around. Well, Franklin, they just left him there on this side of the van to try to get back inside when he can. And he's pissed about it. Like, he wants to go inside and he's mad about it. Well, he finally does make his way inside. Pam and Kirk come down from the upstairs. Earlier, Franklin was talking about how there was a watering hole and they wanted to know where the watering hole was. And he's like, "It's down there in that path, blah, blah, blah."
Which, by the way, during this scene, like, it looks like a lot of people have thought, like, what Franklin's chewing on was like a cigar.
Oh, because he was eating some of that barbecue.
Yeah, and I've always been like, no, it's a sausage. And like, but if you hear Gunnar Hansen on like some commentaries and stuff, he likes to pretend it's a penis.
Well, it looked kind of like a penis. It kind of
does. Plus, if you think about it, you know, they're cooking up barbecue out of people.
Oh, I didn't even think about
why
that.
Why not? You know?
Oh, gross.
Might as well use the penis. Could you make a penis sausage, though?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be
sausage
just,
is
like,
just
tough?
ground up meat
Yeah, but
in a casing.
well, then it could have just been anything.
Yeah. And it could have had a penis casing.
Ew, penis casing. That sounds disgusting.
Anyway. So Pam and Kirk leave to go to the watering hole. Sally and Jerry are upstairs, and Franklin's just wheeling around, and he sees this like pile of bones with some feathers just hanging out.
Yeah, it's definitely like somebody has decorated it.
It's very strange.
And then he sees the bone chandelier, which all the bones in this movie, that's a big thing. Like they got those from part of them. I believe they bought a real skeleton from like India or something.
Oh, damn.
And another part, they got them from a veterinarian who had just a pile of bones and corpses just
That's
lying
smart.
around.
Yeah.
And so they got them from there and stuff like that. And I believe somebody, one of the crew members, accidentally injected herself in the leg when she was injecting formaldehyde in one of the dead animals or whatever.
Oh, no.
So that was a accident.
Oh,
but
that's
but
terrible.
yeah, there is a shit ton of bones.
Yes. Well, then it cuts to Pam and Kirk, and they're looking for the watering hole, and they're like running and flirting and blah, blah, blah. Well, there's no water in the watering hole anymore. And they hear something, so they're looking around, and they see a house. So they're like, oh, we're going to go ask for gas. So they're walking closer, and the noise they're hearing is getting louder, and it's actually a generator. So Kirk knows there's actually gas
Yeah.
somewhere.
And, he says maybe I could leave him some stuff. Basically saying, bartering for gas.
Right. Because he's like, I can leave him a couple dollars and my guitar,
Yeah.
and then I have to come back anyway. So when I get my guitar, I'll give him a couple more dollars.
And you will not get the chance to do that.
Nope.
So, yeah, they start beginning the walk up to the house. And there's a scene missing here, but I think the way they cut it was perfect. Because, like, there's a scene where you can tell they walk past this, like, torn up tent and stuff like that. And we just kind of go into a close-up of, like, this watch hanging from a tree with a nail in it, and then a torn up tent, and then it cuts to them walking up to the house. So obviously they've walked past this, and I think it would, because the scene that got cut was them like stopping and like commenting on all this stuff.
Oh, really?
So I really thought cutting that was perfect because that kind of created that flow.
Right. So they go to the front door and no one's answering. But all of a sudden, I don't know if like Kirk kicked this tooth or this tooth just fell from somewhere.
It looked like he went to open the like screen door and maybe it was like up on top or something. I can't remember.
Yeah. Well, it falls and he picks it up and he scares Pam with it. So she kind of like runs off. There's like a swing out in the yard or whatever.
Right.
She goes to sit over there. And he turns around and the door's kind of open. So he decides he's going to yell inside the house.
Right.
And he hears this noise. It was a pig, right?
Yes, because I think he hears it like off in the back. He kind of hears a squealing.
So
And
he knows there's someone or something.
Yeah, so he enters to go check.
And as he's coming up to this entryway, like inside the house, whatever,
Yeah.
he gets head over the head with a sledgehammer.
Yes, and this is our first, man, and you're making light of it, but that scene
It was
where
scary.
it's fucking frightening even now. Like, obviously this movie doesn't scare me anymore. I say it's just when I first saw it, and a few times afterwards it did. It still kind of gets me a little bit if I watch it alone. But that part where he comes out and you get to see him, and it's just this massive
Oh, yeah.
person wearing a mask like of skin, and then he just raises that hammer up and whop. And I don't know if you noticed throughout this entire movie, there isn't a lot of gore.
Right.
There's maybe a little flecks of blood here and there, and like if you see them cutting, you see a little bit of blood. But a lot of people will tell you that this movie is super gory.
No.
Because, and it's because it feels that way, the way it's cut.
Right.
Because there's so much, like, hints at gore. You know what I mean? Like, they cut away and they cut back. And it's kind of because, honestly, Hooper was aiming for a PG rating.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was trying to keep the violence moderate, the language mild, and most of the horror was implied. But in reality, I think it ended up giving it an R. Like, and even the ratings board insisted on an X rating, and he had to. It was insane. He had to cut it and stuff like that. And like I said, if you think about it, there's not much gore in it.
Right.
There's not a lot of cursing. There's no nudity.
I was about to say nobody was naked.
Yeah, we get no tits.
Damn it.
I know. There's no real TNA in this movie, so it's like, man. And like I said, a lot of people would argue with you that this film is super gory, and it's really not.
Right. Compared to other things, no.
Yeah. And so Kirk goes down.
And he's seizing.
Ugh, dude. Oh, I know a lot of movies after this do this. The whole seizing thing when you get hit in the head.
Uh-huh.
But for some reason, this movie that feels brutal.
Oh, yeah. Because you would have thought that he would have died one swing.
Yeah. And I mean, I think in real life, because my sister's a doctor, so, and obviously I ask her all sorts of morbid questions, but but I think in real life, like a piece of your bone fragment from your skull could go into your brain.
Oh, yeah.
And cause you to do this.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So,
or it doesn't even have to be that. It's your brain swells from being hit.
Right.
Which causes you to have a seizure.
Right. And so Leatherface, who's played by Gunnar Hansen, and the reason why he looks so towering is because they gave him platform boots.
Oh.
Yeah. And, I mean, he was already big. He got the job as soon as he walked through the door. Hooper always said, as soon as I saw Hansen fill the doorway, I gave him the job immediately. and Hansen was born in Iceland and moved to the United States at the age of 5. And he lived in Maine, I believe, until he was 11. And then his family moved to Texas. And, that's where he attended University of Texas. And like I said, as soon as Hooper saw him, he had the job as Leatherface. And honestly, Gunnar Hansen's Leatherface is Leatherface. I've never seen, and sorry everyone, I've never seen another one of these remakes or sequels that quite gets the body type right.
Yeah.
Other than Gunnar Hansen, because he's not just fat. Later on there's like, I think in like the 4th movie, there's like a big old, Leatherface is kind of chunky. But in this one, he's big.
Right.
He's not really fat. He's just fucking big. God. And so, yes, Leatherface haunted my fucking nightmares when I was a little kid.
Oh my goodness.
So he slides Kirk back into the killing room.
Yes. And Pam doesn't see Kirk for a minute. So
Right.
she's like, okay, what's going on? So she goes to investigate.
And this shot of her getting off the swing and walking in, and they achieved that by he laid on a flatbed dolly on the tracks, and they kind of rolled him. Tobe Hooper, they rolled him under the swing and stuff, and they tracked. And I believe they actually had to fight to get this scene in the movie,
even though she's not naked.
Yeah, well, no, it wasn't a ratings thing. It was like the studio, money. They wanted to cut it down, and they had to fight like to get this in there because honestly, and to this day, that's the most iconic shot. Like in film class, they teach you about this shot.
Oh, wow.
Like the way it's framed and the way it follows her as she walks up. And yeah, there's a butt framed all nice, but it's just the way it tracks her.
Okay, I can see that, yeah.
Hey there, everybody. Drayton Sawyer here for Night of the Horrorphile. They called me aboard to share with you one of my famous recipes. That's right, my recipe for Texas dry rub. Now, Now, I'm not going to share with you my barbecue sauce recipe because that's only handed down to the Sawyer clan from Grandpa himself. Now, moving on. What you're going to need for your ingredients is 5 tablespoons paprika, 3 tablespoons salt, 2 tablespoons garlic powder, 2 tablespoons onion powder, 1 tablespoon black pepper, 1 tablespoon dried parsley, 2 teaspoons cayenne pepper, 2 teaspoons of ground cumin, 1 teaspoon ground coriander, 1 teaspoon dried oregano, 1/4 teaspoon of hot chili powder. Now you can also throw some brown sugar in there, but that's optional. But don't use any more than half a cup. Now, I could list off calories and carbs and what have you, but I don't think it really matters. Now, first of all, make sure you have a nice brisket. A great brisket will complement the rub. Now, where you get your meat is your own business. You know, a man's got to do what a man's got to do to feed his family. Moving on. In a medium bowl, whisk together paprika, salt, garlic powder, onion powder, black pepper, dried parsley, cayenne pepper, cumin, coriander, oregano, hot chili powder until thoroughly mixed. Now, the rub's ready. It's very easy to make a rub, but this one will impress your guests. Just make sure your guests aren't screaming and such, because there's no need for that. And there's also no need for one of the boys to tear up the goddamn door. Look what you did. The state of the economy today, I swear. Anyway, this has been Drayton Sawyer bringing you a delicious dry rub recipe. Thank you. Now back to the show.
So she goes to investigate, and she walks into the house, and she walks a different way and opens these curtains, and as she opens them, she falls into a pile of feathers, and she sees bones everywhere.
Yeah, there's like a chair made out of bones and skin. Ugh. And like chickens hanging in cages, which were actually chickens.
Yeah, you could tell.
Yeah, they had to keep hitting the cage to get them kind of riled up. But
that's so mean. That's so terrible.
Oh, man.
So she's looking around, and the more she sees, the more freaked out she gets. Mm-hmm. And she starts to gag. And I wrote, she starts to gag and freak out, but doesn't run away.
Yeah, she more stumbles.
She's just kind of like frozen there after she had fallen. And then she sees Leatherface. Yeah, and she starts running.
He comes chasing her out of this. And now that doorway, we didn't really touch on that, but it looks like, to me, it reminds me of a slaughterhouse. Like, because you've got a ramp going up into this entryway inside the house, and there's that sliding fucking metal door, which has always creeped me out. So it just always reminded me of a slaughterhouse.
Oh, yeah.
And so Leatherface fucking runs after her ass.
She gets outside, but he grabs her in like one swipe.
Right. And Gunnar Hansen was fucking strong, man. Because there's no like stuntmen in this movie. Well, there is later, sort of. We'll touch on that with Marilyn. Poor Marilyn. But yeah, he grabs her with like one arm and she just hauls her back in the house. And she's still like running in midair when he grabs her.
Yeah. And he takes her into that room and hangs her on the hook.
Which, man, again, the implied violence and the implied gore and stuff like that.
Yeah, because they don't show the hook impaling her or anything.
It's perfect, though. Like,
yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I don't know about you. But when you think back on this scene, you feel like you've seen the hook go into her.
Oh, yeah.
But you never do.
Right.
You don't see the hook.
But you can imagine what it looks like, yeah.
Yeah.
And she's screaming, and she doesn't really stop screaming. He goes over, and he starts a chainsaw.
Yeah.
And this is where he's going to cut up Kirk's body.
This chainsaw was live, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yes. Like Gunnar Hansen had told William Vail, who plays Kirk, don't move. Because if you move, I might nick you. You're probably going to die. Because, again, like it's one of those things where you want to look good and you don't have money.
Right.
So you got to have a live chainsaw. So, yeah. So
it'll be okay.
Yeah. So Leatherface starts carving up Kirk in front of her.
And she's just screaming.
Which is another thing. I just feel like every time I go away from this movie for a while, I go back and I'm like, oh yeah, you didn't see him actually cutting into him. I don't.
Right.
It's like a magic trick this movie plays with your mind.
Because you can imagine it. So, back at the house, Franklin, Sally, and Jerry are talking about the hitchhiker. And Jerry keeps teasing Franklin, saying that the hitchhiker's going to come back and he's going to kill him. And Sally's telling him, no, you worry too much. Everything is fine. And Jerry just keeps on. And Franklin's looking for his knife. And he's like, where the hell is my knife? But he had given it to Sally in the van before they got to the house. Or as they got to the house or whatever. And that'll come in a minute. Sorry. Jerry decides that he's going to go look for Pam and Kirk. Sally is like, well, let me go with you. And he's like, no, you better stay here. Because the sun's going down. She's like, fine. I'll help Franklin look for this knife.
Yeah.
And Franklin and Sally are talking again about the hitchhiker. Franklin thinks that he followed them, and he was like, he couldn't have followed us, right? And Sally's just so annoyed with him.
Again, probably real.
Right? It cuts to Jerry, and he is down by the watering hole, which isn't there.
Yeah.
The empty watering hole.
The
And,
dried up lake.
Yeah. And Jerry can't find Kirk or Pam, and the sun's really going down.
Yeah.
But he also sees the house, and he goes up, walks around the front, and knocks on the door. And no one answers, but he turns around and he sees the towels that they had taken with them. They were on the porch.
Yeah.
And he decides he's going to go in the house. And he winds up in the kitchen where they're...
Yeah, because he also hears, when he's walking into the house, he hears that noise. And it's
Oh, yeah, he hears
really
a weird
creepy
noise.
because it's like...
And when he walks in, he sees a freezer.
Mm-hmm.
And he opens the freezer, and out comes Pam's body. She's not dead.
No, she's still kind of alive. It's just like Leatherface put her in there to keep her kind of fresh for later.
Ew.
So she like lunges out, which again scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah, because she's like hanging out halfway, like twitching around.
And Jerry turns around and out pops fucking Leatherface with the hammer.
Just boop.
And again, man, the scream that Jerry lets out here is honestly probably real because Gunnar Hansen said, during shooting and stuff, most of the people stayed away from him.
So they would be scared of it?
Well, yeah, because even while they were shooting, the actors called each other by their character's name, and so they would distance themselves from Gunnar Hansen to maybe make the fear real. So some of the scream is kind of real because it's the first time he's seen Gunnar Hansen in full costume.
Oh yeah,
and so you turn around and there's that. I would shit my pants. But I mean, they also probably stayed away from him because. They were, like I said, they were shooting 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And Gunnar Hansen only had one costume.
Oh, wow.
And they couldn't wash it because it was dyed.
Oh, yeah.
So they didn't want the color running. So imagine this.
Ugh.
Gunnar Hansen is wearing this 16 hours a day, sweating,
Ew.
getting disgusting.
It smells horrible because
Yes.
it's 150 degrees in Texas.
Right. And he even said, at one point they wouldn't even let me stand in line for lunch.
Oh, I bet not.
Yeah. And yeah, like you said, the heat is just
Ugh.
baking him inside of this costume.
Ugh. Anyway. Ugh. So, he hits Jerry, and he is pissed at this point because now this is 3 people that have come into his house.
Yeah. And poor Leatherface.
I know. And he goes over to the window to see if there's anybody else.
Yeah, because he's kind of like, where the fuck are these people coming from?
Yeah,
What the
he's
hell?
like pacing back and
This
forth.
never happens.
He's like, 3 in one day. No, I'm just
And,
kidding.
and Gunnar Hansen was he was dedicated to this character. I mean, Hooper allowed him to develop Leatherface as he saw fit, under his supervision. But Hansen kind of came up with his own Leatherface. He figured he was mentally handicapped, never really learned to talk properly. So Hansen went to a school at one point for the mentally handicapped, and he watched how they moved and listened to them, and how they talked and communicated and stuff, just to kind of get a feel for his character he wanted. And he tried, I think he tried the best and kind of succeeded as making it non-offensive. It's not too over the top. Later sequels, they make Leatherface a little too over the top, and he's just a big dumb baby at one point. I think that's the 4th one. But, so there's a moment here in this scene where he's trying to figure out what the fuck to do. And it's clear, even though he's disturbed and crazy looking with those teeth, which were made by Hansen's own dentist. But he's sitting there and there's a moment on his non-face, because it's a mask, where you can tell he's like, what do I do next?
Right.
What is this? What's happening? And you almost are like, oh, he's not doing this on purpose.
Right. He's just mad that they're in his house.
Right.
I mean, I'd be mad too.
I mean, fuck. I'm just saying, if teenagers start wandering into my fucking house.
Oh my God.
Can you blame Leatherface for hammering some motherfuckers?
No. So, Sally and Frank are waiting in the dark now. It's really dark.
Mm.
And Sally's just honking the horn of the van. That's going to do something? They know where they're supposed to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they're yelling for Jerry.
They're just standing at the van yelling for Jerry.
Jerry!
Well, Franklin wants to go.
Jerry!
And Sally's like, no, I'm not leaving without Jerry.
Jerry!
And when she says this, I'm like, okay, you're not going to leave without Jerry, but what about Pam and Kirk?
Yeah, well, fuck them. They shouldn't have gone off to have sex. Maybe. They went off to swim, not have sex.
Swim. Maybe. So they're just yelling, and Franklin really wants to leave. And Sally's like, no, I'm going to look. And Franklin says, no. And they're fighting back and forth. And she's like telling him to give her the flashlight. Mm-hmm. And he's not doing it. So she's like, I'm leaving it anyway. And Franklin's like, well, I want to go with you.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Dude.
Make
stop
up your
being so
fucking
fucking
mind.
annoying.
So.
Jerry!
Oh my God. So they're walking off. Well, she's walking. He's being pushed. And they're going to find Jerry. And they are arguing most of the time. And they're about, I don't know, partial way to the house.
Yeah. They're walking through this woods, which they made it look like they were walking longer than they actually were, because they had 2 tracks. Now, when I say tracks, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but you've probably seen it, they'll have tracks that they put this thing on where they have the camera person sitting on it. And then they roll it down, kind of like a train, it looks like. Uh-huh. Well, anyway, they would shoot it on one side with the tracks, and then they take the tracks and everything to the other side and shoot it.
Oh, okay.
So it, and they did some camera work and stuff and made it look like they were walking longer than they were.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So they're walking, and all of a sudden, Franklin gets chainsawed.
Which, by the way, and this is that scene I was telling you about. This is another scene that sticks with me. That scene where, like, the flashlight hits Leatherface.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's so sudden, and it's a big jump scare.
Oh, yeah. Because it's all of a sudden chainsaw.
Yeah, and I believe they cut, like, 4 frames from the scene to make it like that jump. Kind of
okay.
A seat jumper. But, but I feel so bad because after the scare is over with, then the immediate relief rushes over you because Franklin just got butchered in his wheelchair. And I couldn't be more happy.
Oh my God. He wasn't that bad.
Sally!
He wasn't that bad. I mean, maybe it's because I have 2 toddlers.
He did act like one of our toddlers.
Like
a big toddler.
Right? So I'm kind of used to it.
If I have any more fun, I don't know how I'm going to do. And the spitting, man, the way he does his mouth.
Oh my God. He did do that a lot.
Good Lord. So again, the wave of relief rushes over me.
Anyway.
Thank you, Leatherface.
Franklin gets chainsawed in half. Sally's just standing there screaming.
Again, did you hear what you just said?
What?
He gets chainsawed in half, and you don't see it though.
Oh.
But it feels like you saw it.
You scared me. I was like, what
I'm
did
sorry.
I say? What did I say?
But it's exciting because one of the draws of our show is I'm getting to see you watch these things for the first time. So it's fun to hear you say stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what the movie does to you. You think you saw something, but you didn't.
Right.
Like, and so you're like, yeah, he cut his fucking head off. And then you're like, you think about it, and you're like, well, no, he probably, did he?
He didn't. So Sally's just standing there screaming. Then she finally decides that she needs to run.
Right.
And Leatherface is chasing her.
And Sally, because I think you made the mention while we were watching, you were like, Jesus Christ, can she not run? Marilyn Burns actually was a terrible runner.
I could tell.
She was so slow that even in his platform boots, Gunnar Hansen could catch up to her fast.
Oh, yeah.
So what he had to do, and you'll notice it in this scenes, what he had to do to make it look like she was running faster and he couldn't catch her was he had to stop and cut things for a second.
Oh,
he would have to do random different things. Like there's one scene where you just see him cutting a branch. Like, for no reason. But
you don't need to do that.
Yeah. So that's kind of why he was doing that. And there's actually during this part where he's chasing her through the woods, which is a good part and it's tense. I don't know. Do you think if the weapon would have been something different, it would be less tense? I've always thought that. Like if
maybe
Leatherface had a hammer still.
Oh, yeah. It wouldn't have been as
hammer.
scary. No.
But that saw noise, oh my God, that keeps you awake at night. It's to this day why a chainsaw starts and I get a little shiver. But but there's a part in this part where he falls. Gunnar Hansen actually fell. You don't see it, obviously, but there's.
I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, his like feet came out from underneath him because he wasn't thinking that he wasn't wearing like sport shoes. You know, he's not wearing cleats or anything, so his feet slipped out from underneath him. And there's a scene coming up because they're chasing. She runs. Kind of looks like alongside of a fence to go to the house. Mm-hmm. And she gets to the house. Well, there's a scene where he's still chasing her. And if you notice, as she like turns the corner and takes off down the way towards the house, he follows, but he does this weird, like kind of comedic, big old wide turn.
Oh, yeah.
When he turns himself. And Gunnar Hansen had to do that to keep from slipping and falling again. So there's several times where you'll see him do this like thing where he runs past a little bit and then turns and then goes.
He's got to get his footing right.
Yeah.
So, like you said, they're running down the way and she sees a house with the lights on
Mhm.
and decides to go inside. Because, there might be somebody inside to help her. So she goes inside, shuts the door, and he just starts chainsawing the door. Because, you couldn't open it or anything.
Well, he's, Leatherface isn't.
The brightest bulb.
No.
I got it.
He's a good boy.
So she runs up the stairs and she's like screaming for help. And she thought that she saw some people in chairs, but actually they're dead. Well, that's what I wrote here because I really thought it was like a grandma and a grandpa dead. Really, the grandma's dead, but the grandpa ain't.
Yeah.
He looks dead, though.
Yeah, we find out later he's still alive somehow.
It's very weird.
That's horrifying later on.
So she gets scared and runs back down the stairs. But as she's running down the stairs, Leatherface gets in the door. And so he chases her back up.
Mm-hmm.
And without any hesitation, I cannot tell you, I could not do this. I don't care if someone's chasing me with a chainsaw. I would have to hesitate for a minute. She just jumps out the fucking window.
Yeah. Like
Plus
leaps through it. Then that's why I think she's one of the best final girls. Yeah, she's a little slow on the run. But she's got the scream and
oh, fucking balls,
that window.
man.
Yeah, she's got some nuts on her. So and in this scene, I had mentioned a stunt double earlier. Well, in this scene, the stunt double is the one who jumps through the window, right?
Well, that's smart, yeah.
Now, they get a shot of her jumping through the window, and, what you don't see is she obviously lands on the padding, they have out. Well, they had to make the scene where Marilyn Burns hits the ground.
Yeah.
So they kind of just push Marilyn Burns off the roof.
Oh, my God. What?
Yeah, so she still got hurt. Even though they used the stunt person. So she didn't have to go through the glass, but she still kind of got banged up on the drop. And if you notice, there are cuts and bruises, and some of those are real.
Oh, I was wondering that too.
Because again, like I said, Marilyn went through fucking hell.
Well, they are running through the trees. Like, you had to have gotten hurt.
Yeah. And like I said, that heat. Man, could you imagine doing all these takes in the heat?
Oh, and she's wearing white pants.
Yeah, and Jesus. And, even Gunnar Hansen mentioned at one point, somebody had to, I think it was a producer or somebody, I can't remember, but they had to, take him off the set for a minute because he was dehydrated. He was close to death.
Oh, damn.
He was so bad because, think about it. He's in all this, the big apron and, the mask. And so the guy took him to his car and popped the trunk, and he had a bunch of ice and Lone Star beers. So,
oh, my God.
So he gave him a couple Lone Stars and made him sit in the AC for a little while,
Good.
because of the heat.
Oh, yeah. It'll kill you.
Yeah, and I'll explain it later, but it does something to your mind as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, jumps out the window with no hesitation. And he goes outside after her, so she starts to run away. And they're running for a long time until she runs smack dab into a tree branch.
Yeah.
Just
Ow.
bam! Falls down.
Shit.
So, obviously, he gets closer to her. And she gets up and she's running a little bit more. But she sees the gas station. She runs inside and the attendant's there.
Yay.
And she's trying to explain to him what's going on. And
Well, there's no one there now.
she's freaking out. She says to call the police, and he's like,
There's no phone.
there's no phone here.
We gotta drive the truck.
So he gets the
police
truck.
station.
He goes outside to get the truck and said, there's nobody out here now.
Yeah.
In the background, the radio's going, and it's playing the news about these corpses again.
Right. And there's this long scene here because he goes out to get the truck. There's a long scene here where she's kind of looking at the fireplace, like where the meat's cooking.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you don't see a head or anything like that, but I don't know why, but that's when you kind of put it together.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason. Like, they're eating people. But why is that?
I don't know.
You know what I mean, though?
Yeah.
It's weird. But anyway, yeah, there's this long focal point where she's staring at the barbecue cooking. And then the attendant comes back in.
He pulls up with the truck. He gets out, and he's got this sack.
Yeah.
And he wants to put her in it.
He's like, all right, now.
She's like, oh, hell no.
Does my Drayton Sawyer sound more like Ronald Reagan?
I don't know.
Why is that?
I don't know.
All right, now we're going to get you in the bag, mother.
I don't know.
Anyway, so yeah, he tries to put her in this burlap sack, and she obviously starts fighting him.
And she grabs a knife.
He grabs the fucking broom.
And he just starts smacking her with it. It's like, bam, bam, bam.
It's really humorous, but I mean, in reality, Jim Siedow, he had a problem with the violence. A little bit, you know. He was having a hard time bringing himself to hit her and to give an actual beating that looked real, you know, because but they were all egging him on, including Marilyn Burns, to get this
She's like,
performance
slap
out of him.
me.
Right. And so he's fucking beating her with this fucking broom. And the crazy part is, like I said earlier in the movie, he seems normal.
Right.
He even acts normal at the beginning when she gets in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's concerned and he seems genuine. But it's like, as you see him walking in with the burlap sack, his face changes. And that's Jim Sidow's performance. But his face changes and it turns fucking manic.
Oh, yeah.
Like with those buck teeth and stuff like that.
He's like ready to go now.
Yeah, and that rubbery face.
The rubbery face. That's funny. So he's smacking her with a broom, and they wrestle down to the floor, and he ends up knocking her out, and ties her hands, and gags her, and puts her in the bag and drags her to the truck.
There's a whole scene here where he's like dragging her into the truck. He shuts the door. He gets in the truck to go to take off, but he left the lights and the door open. And so he even comments, liable to run a man out of business. Leaving the lights on. It's just like the normalness of this to him.
So, they're driving off and she's squirming and yelling and he's just poking at her
He's like,
with the broom. And he's like, we'll be there soon.
No need for that now. And then he pokes her again.
Yeah, that was weird. So they're driving and they see the hitchhiker.
Yeah.
And he stops and he gets out and he's like yelling at him. And he stops and gets out and he starts to hit him.
Yeah.
For being stupid. And
another awesome shot of him beating the hitchhiker in front of the fucking headlights. I don't know. That's a cool shot. You know, Edwin Neal has said in Texas, the cops had stopped and shook his hand because apparently he drove hitchhiker crime down like 18%.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, because the message to take away from this movie, like I've said, don't pick up hitchhikers.
Right. And don't go in people's houses.
Right.
Stop fucking with people.
Right.
Anyway. So, blah, 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 sorry. The attendant gets in the truck and the hitchhiker jumps in the back and they drive to the house. And this is where you learn that the hitchhiker and Leatherface are brothers.
Yeah. And I had heard Tobe Hooper talk about this in a commentary, and he said the original intent was to have all three of them to be brothers.
They might be.
But it's kind of confusing. But then you're like, well, maybe they're inbred. Who knows?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Ew.
Lots of bloodlines.
Ew.
But yeah. And then you get another awesome Jim Siedow scene where he's like, "Look what your brother did to the damn door. Has no pride in his home." It's like, oh my God. Oh, Jim Sidow's character, man. Wow. And I love him in this, and you get a double dose in the sequel.
Oh, really?
There is a lot of Drayton Sawyer in that movie, or the attendant, or whatever. There's a scene where he's at an Oklahoma chili cook-off.
Oh, my God. We like our cook-offs.
Yeah.
So they take Sally inside, and the hitchhiker takes her to a chair, takes the bag off of her, and when she sees his face, she's like, "Oh, fuck."
And he's like, "Oh, I thought you were in a hurry." It's like, oh.
And the attendant and Leatherface start fighting about the door.
Yeah, he's like, "You broke the damn door." And then, like, you know, Leatherface, again, he's like sitting there communicating in like whimpers and like moans and stuff.
Yeah.
And the attendant, he's like, "So none of them got away?" Okay. And he like stands there for a minute like, "Well, I got to beat him for something." So, "Look what you did to the damn door." Comes at him again. Oh, man.
The hitchhiker is tying Sally to the chair. And, this is... The attendant says, "Get back in there." Because Leatherface is walking around. He's like, "Get back in there."
Get back in there. And Leatherface is wearing a new mask here. It's like an old lady mask. And if you notice, like, throughout the movie,
yeah.
I believe he wears 3 masks through this movie.
Oh.
Yeah. And I think it's 3. But anyway, maybe just 2. But shit, I need to stop. But
So, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, sorry. But yeah, it's wearing the old lady mask, kind of like a grandma mask, sort of. It's got makeup and stuff on because he's the housekeeper in this situation.
Oh, okay.
And if you notice, now that Leatherface is around them, he's a little less intimidating.
Yes. He's kind of cowering down.
Yeah, and Hansen always had it in his mind that Leatherface wouldn't be bad in reality.
Oh, yeah.
Like, but he's controlled by the family.
Right.
He's more under their control, and that's how Hansen kind of played him.
That makes sense. So, along those lines, the attendant tells Leatherface and Hitch to bring Grandpa down to the table to eat with it.
I just find it funny because sometimes you abbreviate names.
Yes.
And you just called the hitchhiker Hitch.
Oh, I did?
Yes, and in my mind, I immediately saw Will Smith.
Oh my God.
It's just Leatherface and Will Smith.
Sorry.
Welcome to Earth.
Oh my God. Anyway, they're going to bring Grandpa down to eat dinner with them.
Yeah.
So
Go get Grandpa.
So they bring him down, sorry. And they go over to Sally and they cut her finger. And
Yeah.
This is the grossest thing to me. They put her finger in Grandpa's mouth.
Starts sucking it.
And he starts drinking her blood.
So fucked up.
I
part.
was like, what the actual fuck?
So this is fucked up. So this is near the end, I believe, of the shooting and stuff like that. And the heat and the dehydration. And they actually used like animal parts in this scene and stuff like that. Real animal parts and food. So the food, because of the heat.
Oh, it had flies.
And it took about 36 hours to shoot this scene.
Ugh.
So like, and 5 hours to put on makeup. Because, the brutal temperatures was like melting shit away. And so, like, the dinner scene, there was rotten food.
Ew.
And stinky Gunnar Hansen. And, like, there was no air conditioning, no electric fans. And so, like, they would say, like, they would give, like, a 5-minute break just to go throw up.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, it was that bad. And so the heat and everything was really, like, fucking with their minds at this time. But yeah, even Marilyn Burns and Hansen said it was insane. And so when he goes to cut her finger, which, by the way, Grandpa is played by an 18-year-old
Oh,
in
God.
makeup because he was a skinny dude. So when he goes to cut her finger, they had to do so many takes because on the knife, they had tape over it.
Oh, okay.
And there was supposed to be a tube running to it with blood. So when he did it, he pulled it across her finger, the tube would spray the blood, and it looked like it was cutting.
Yeah.
That's how they used to do that. Well, they kept doing it, but the tube wasn't working. The blood wouldn't come out right. So they had to keep making takes over and over again in this hot, smelly fucking hellhole.
Oh, my God.
And so finally, Gunnar Hansen just said, fuck it. And at this time, they were all losing their fucking minds. Some of them, even like Ed Neal, said that like he felt like he was the hitchhiker. Parts of it felt like they were going insane and they were their characters. So Gunnar Hansen at this point said, fuck this, because he wanted to get it over with, and pulled the tape off and actually cut Marilyn Burns' finger.
Oh, damn.
And none of them really noticed until afterwards because they were, like I said, they were going insane.
Wow. Ugh, that's crazy.
Throw up break.
Ugh. So, Sally had passed out, and she woke up screaming, obviously. I would too. Which made the hitchhiker start to howl, because he's a little crazy.
Little?
Yeah. And the attendant, I'm like, words? What? The attendant starts to freak out on the hitchhiker because he's just annoyed with him and wants him to stop.
Yeah. Yeah, he switches back. It's weird. Like I said, Jim Siedow's performance here, it's really flip-flopped. Like, there's at one point where he looks at Grandpa wondering, what's Grandpa think about all this? And then he snaps back to being crazy. And then, like, at this point, he's telling them to stop torturing the poor girl.
Yeah, because they're, like, in her face and stuff.
Yeah. And basically telling him, if you're going to kill her, get it the fuck over with. But
right.
Then he switches back again and wants Grandpa to do it, even though he knows Grandpa's fucking a mummy. And can't kill somebody like he used to, even though he insists, Grandpa's the best.
Yeah, they're saying Grandpa's the best, and he should have this one.
Yeah. That Grandpa, he's the best there ever was. And, like, gives fucking... And there's this scene that's another scary ass scene.
Oh, yeah.
When I was little, where they hang her head over the tub.
Yes.
And they're having this old mummy man trying to hit her in the head with a hammer.
And he keeps dropping.
Oh, God.
And he keeps dropping.
Keeps dropping. And he eventually hits her.
But she's still alive because she's still screaming.
Yeah.
He didn't do a very good
and
job.
they're all laughing.
They're like, hit that bitch.
On. Hit that bitch, Grandpa. Hit that bitch. And then, like, the hitchhiker, and the way Marilyn Burns or Sally gets away, the hitchhiker's fucking getting impatient, and he wants to do it. So he's like, give me the hammer. And then, like, tries.
Let's go over.
Yeah, let's go over to grab the hammer. And that's how she bolts.
Yeah, she jumps up and she's like, no. So she goes, she's such a badass. She jumps out another window.
That's right. 2 windows. Again.
2 windows.
Sally, Marilyn Burns is the best final girl.
Yes.
2 windows.
No hesitation.
No
at
hesitation. All. And kind of stumbles but keeps fucking running.
Well, she's kind of down at this point. She's
right.
like, oh.
Oh, right.
And
she just got kind of knocked in the head a little.
Yeah. And she starts to, like, hobble away. Well, the hitchhiker comes out and starts to chase her. And she runs off. And, of course, Leatherface gets his chainsaw.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and by this point, it's like dawn.
Yeah. The sun's rising.
So
Which most of this scene was actually shot at sunset.
Oh.
The scene on the road, definitely. I'm not sure about this as they're running away from the farmhouse.
Oh. I don't know. So they're chasing her, and the hitchhiker catches up to him. Words. The hitchhiker catches up to her, and he starts to, like, cut off her shirt, which is weird, but okay.
Yeah.
And they're, like, in the middle of the road, and he gets run over by a semi.
Yeah. And, man, that was fucked up. This is pretty gory, actually.
Yeah. Because he doesn't get run over with one tire or two tires, but all 4 sets of tires on this semi. Well, I guess not the front 2, like the trailer tires. It's still pretty fucking scary.
Oh, right. And the name of this truck is the Black Maria.
The Black Maria.
Which I wonder, because Thomas Edison's studio, his film studio, was called Black Maria.
Oh, that's cool.
I wonder if this is a nod. You think?
I don't know.
I don't know. It's something I'd never be able to check because no one fucking would care.
Except for you.
I don't fucking know, dude. Why are you thinking back that far?
That's funny.
But yeah, so this is the end of our hitchhiker friend.
Yep, he did. So, Sally goes to get help from the driver. And for some reason, he gets out of the truck. Leatherface starts chasing them. When the driver had gotten out of the truck, he grabbed what is that tool called?
It's, as you just call it, a wrench. I think it's a monkey wrench, but I have no idea, you know.
Yeah, well, he grabs a wrench. Like one of those really big ones. That's what she said. Leatherface is chasing him. So he turns around and throws the tool at him. And Leatherface falls over.
Yeah.
And drops his chainsaw, and his chainsaw ends up hitting his leg.
Right.
Just like one part of it.
And it's, so the way they achieved this was
it chicken breast? Because it kind of looked like a chicken breast.
No, beef brisket. But
oh, okay.
But what they had underneath Gunnar Hansen's pants was a metal plate with like a chunk of brisket or some kind of meat on top. So the actual chainsaw would hit it, but not actually cut into Gunnar Hansen's leg, which would be terrible.
Right.
Well, if you notice, the scream Leatherface lets out during the scene is pretty loud and pretty manly, unlike what we've heard earlier. Well, that's because like the heat from the chain on the chainsaw heated up that metal plate on Gunnar Hansen's leg and actually burnt him a little bit.
Oh, no.
So in this scene, he actually gets burnt.
Oh, no. That's terrible.
Right.
So, at this point, we had to rewind because we were like, okay, where did the driver go? Because you don't see him again. So we had to rewind. But in between throwing the tool and Leatherface getting cut with the chainsaw, he just runs off. Doesn't get back in his truck or anything, just runs off.
And this guy's booking it too, and I believe this is like Bill Ginn or something. He's shit. Where did my notes on him? Okay, sorry. He's the truck driver, and he was also the composer for this movie called Mongrel, directed by Robert Burns. Who side tangent here? Robert Burns was like the art director for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and he was probably the single most expert on the actor-journalist Rondo Houghton. And if you don't know who that is, just fucking Google it. I don't know. But more random info I had to purge from my brain. Sorry, everybody.
So he just books it. And this pickup truck comes by, and Sally gets in. And the driver starts to take off. And Leatherface is mad. And he is just like waving this chainsaw around.
Yeah.
And it cuts from him doing that to Sally in the back of the truck, and she is like telling the truck driver to go, go, go.
Yeah, and she
Drive,
starts
drive.
laughing.
And then and it cuts back to Leatherface, and he's like waving his chainsaw around.
Yeah.
And it cuts back to Sally, and she is just laughing because she doesn't know what else to do. She's just like overwhelmed with emotion.
And he's fucking, the way he's waving around and he's doing the chainsaw dance is what they call it.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and he's doing this little dance and stuff, and that's how it ends because it cuts to black to our credits. This scene, God, everybody, including Tobe Hooper too, even though some of them kind of were mad at him at the end of the shoot and stuff. They went through hell to make this movie, and it shows. And I think if they went through a comfortable situation and stuff like that, we probably wouldn't get what we got.
Right.
But so yeah, there's that scene where she's laughing in the back of the truck, and Marilyn Burns she has always said, you know, it was so grueling, and they had called her back to do this shoot.
Oh no.
And so she was saying part of it was relief that it was over in her mind.
Right.
Because it was so crazy.
And just like this is the end of the movie, it's relieving because she knows she's safe.
And honestly, this is the first time I ever, and still to this day, it's one of those scenes where as she's driving away in the back of the truck laughing, that relief washes over you because because by the time Franklin gets murdered,
oh yeah,
this movie is in full motherfucking crazy gear.
Oh yes.
Until this scene, and then you get to calm down. And this movie feels long and feels grueling, sort of. I mean, not in a bad way, but it's pretty. It moves. Like you even said, you know, it was a little slow at the beginning, is what you thought.
Right. I was ready to get to killing, but I'm glad that I didn't like turn it off or something like that because it was worth it in the end.
Right. And so originally the name of the movie was Head Cheese. And like I said at the beginning, a lot of things influenced this movie. This is kind of part of one of the group of movies called like drive-in flicks. That were kind of presented as true stories. Legend of Boggy Creek, Walking Tall. Walking Tall's kind of based on reality. Macon County Line, Jackson County Jail, 1976, and The Town That Dreaded Sundown, which, in the case of The Town That Dreaded Sundown, that was actually based on a series of murders in Texarkana, Texas.
Oh.
This is an extremely Texan film where, like, everyone in this movie is Texan. Like, even Jim Siedow lived in Texas. They all mostly lived in Austin, went to Texas, University of Texas and stuff. Another thing that probably influenced Tobe Hooper, like mind why he was coming up with the story with his writing partner was Charles Whitman, who made one of the worst murders in U.S. history on August 1966 at University of Texas, in Austin. Hooper was there. And, 31 people got injured, 14 people killed. It was a 96-minute shooting spree by Charles Whitman, who was up in a tower shooting people with a sniper rifle.
Oh, yeah.
One of the earliest mass shootings, which is kind of, nowadays is so often.
That's
but
terrible.
At the time, Hooper, he remembers people telling him, someone's shooting in the towers. And Hooper's, a little dazed at first because he's just walking to his campus. And then a policeman tells him, go. And Hooper remembers taking a refuge in a building to get away. Mm-hmm. And he remembers seeing the cop get hit and go down.
No.
And so, you got to think all this stuff weighed on him and stuff like that. And I don't know if he set out to make something as a satire and a commentary on the Vietnam War and all these parallels in this movie.
Oh my God. I heard that today too. Was like, this is about the Vietnam War, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay.
It kind of is.
Okay, that's fine.
Because,
I just didn't know.
No, I'm not mad. No, it's okay. It is in the way that it affected our culture. People were displaced. People were basically driven fucking crazy, put out of jobs. Even the way the press handled the violence and everything during the time. I mean, you could see dead bodies on the news like all the time. And so that all kind of weighed on this movie. And so it is a commentary in a way.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, you have these kids who are around the same age as you would be if you were drafted into the Vietnam War, being led off into some place they don't know about, that they think they're comfortable with, that we have lied to them about what it is that's out there, and they come across pure hell. I wouldn't go too far as to say that's all this movie is about, but it definitely is influenced by that,
Right.
you know? So yeah, like I said, the cast and the crew went through pure fucking hell. They ended up not getting a lot of their money, because, I mean, one of the distributors they went with turned out to be a mob front. And so the person was like siphoning money off of the making of this movie.
Oh, no.
And stuff. So a lot of them didn't get to see a lot of their money until I believe New Line acquired the rights and, paid some of them a little bit. But they didn't really make a lot off of this movie.
That's terrible.
It is terrible. But again, this is probably one of the most influential horror movies ever. I mean, it went on to influence generations of filmmakers. You had Wes Craven, who counted the Texas Chainsaw Massacre among his 5 favorite movies. He always called it amazingly visceral visual storytelling. Ridley Scott, who made Alien, he calls it one of only a few really, really great movies. And he used it as reference for his movie Alien. And obviously Rob Zombie was fucking fascinated with these movies. And you can definitely tell this film's influence on his entire work. Although, to me, and he's even said this, to me it's unintentional. Because I think, to me, Rob Zombie shoots movies that he wants to see. And so this movie influenced him so much, it just comes out subconsciously. But that's the thing. This movie sticks with you. And honestly, there's so much I could rattle on about. But I'm not going to. I could probably write a whole fucking book about why this movie's awesome. But it is one of the, I've said before, the greatest film will never be made, but this comes real close to me. And I don't know why. But let's stop talking about me. What did you think about this movie? What did you take away from it?
I really liked it. Don't pick up hitchhikers. Don't go in people's houses. And don't eat barbecue on a roadside.
Don't ruin the damn door. You broke the damn door. So, how would you rank this up? With some of the movie, it's just interesting to me because, like I said, this first watch for you. Well, sort of first watch. You told me you saw bits and pieces, but I think everybody has. It's impossible to not see bits and pieces of this movie.
Right.
I mean, hell, in American Psycho, he's working out to this movie at one point.
Oh.
So, was it scary to you?
I did kind of get jump scared when they were in the forest and Franklin got killed.
Oh, yeah.
Well, also, when Kirk got killed.
Yeah, that's probably the most visceral killing in this movie.
Because you just didn't expect it. I mean, you knew he was going to die, and you knew he was going to die in the house, but you just didn't know how or when.
Right, because, I mean, and I'm sure if we had seen this with fresh eyes back in 1974, it'd be a little different.
Right.
But we know now, teenagers or young adults or whatever, go off into unknown territory and start fucking around with shit they're not supposed to fuck around with. They're going to die.
Right.
It's just a matter of who lives. Or if they live. Or what will be left of them. No, I think that's a tagline of one.
Oh my god.
Subconsciously reading out taglines. But yeah, so that by experience. It's just, This movie's beautiful. And again, this is why I didn't have a legitimate date until I was 18. But
it was pretty great. I mean, I don't know about beautiful and all of that, but I just want to see people get chainsawed in the face.
So, that is our first movie of Slash-a-rama. Next week, we are hitting A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's right. Freddy Begins. Which, Wes Craven. And, man, Tobe Hooper's not with us. Wes Craven's not with us. We recently lost Sid Haig. We're losing some good ones. And it's kind of sad because I kind of wish some of these guys, no famous person's ever going to listen to us, probably. But it'd be kind of nice to know if they could listen.
That'd be cool.
To hear us talk about their work. And it's sad that they're not here to do that. But yeah, so next week, Wes Craven's Nightmare on Elm Street with Heather Langenkamp and Robert Englund.
It's actually one that I've seen.
Oh yeah, that's right. You have seen this.
I mean, I'm gonna watch it again because
I know, right?
I probably
You
missed
fell
a lot
asleep
of stuff.
multiple times when we first watched this together.
I'm not surprised.
So, anyway, until next week, I'm Lee Evans saying, stay spooky.
And I'm Brittany. Stay horrific.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for joining us this week for another awesome episode. You can find us on Twitter at InHorrorFile. That's at InHorrorFile. And also on the web at nightofthehorrorfile.com. And over on Instagram, as well as Facebook. If you have questions, stories, or anything you want to get off your chest, maybe a few death threats, send them to horrorfilemailbag@gmail.com. That's horrorfilemailbag@gmail.com. Also, if you want to support the show, you can rate and review on Apple or anywhere you enjoy fine podcasts. And don't forget to share the show on all your social media platforms. Thank you. See you next week.